Probably channels that know what they're going to talk about, have premeditated their thoughts, taking the anxiety out of a recording. I am not one of those creators, but I do have a few subjects picked out for us today. And most importantly, the subject will deal with the mudflood. Very grassroots in this community. One of the starting points for this rabbit hole. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for joining me, and welcome. So here, since I'm here, let's discuss this photo. Recently, in a video, I had read an essay by Gary Shunung, the creator of the Old Earth Ruins series that we examined, and he had mentioned that these ruins found on Easter Island may have actually have been columns, supporting a larger structure, and what we see carved on the top may have just been done by a primitive people inheriting this region after a reset. And here I found such a picture, and what really caught my eye was this structure. While everybody is staring at the statue itself, more interesting is this perfect structure underneath, very square, that seems to have been unearthed. And just as Gary had suggested, I do believe this may be a supporting column for what may have been a massive structure. Perhaps this seeming mountain behind here was also part of it, with its supposed caves, really having the same color, seeming to be made up of the same stone. And when you consider everything's buried, and the primitives would have had no such doing in what we see underground here, I think Gary makes an excellent point. These statues or carvings look like shit for the old world and what we typically look at. I've never been impressed with the statues at Easter Island, but let me know what you think. Again, these were the thoughts of Gary Shunung. And of course, we've been examining the mudflood for years now. When we first started down this rabbit hole, there was very little available. And if you would punch in mudflood in a search engine, you wouldn't find what you were looking for, at least in our community. And today I've just punched in mudflood in the search engine, and very exciting to see how much pops up that's completely relevant to our research. And what does one think when looking at these images, who hasn't been discussing it for years as we have? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps the mind doesn't allow one to venture too far. Here, for example, we can see one of my pictures that I took of the Salt Lake City Temple while being renovated. And it's nice to have the heavy equipment next to the building just to give you an idea of how massive this is. We're looking at 2 stories below ground level, and construction, we are told, beginning with horse and wagon in the 1850s. Here I believe this is in New York City or possibly New Jersey. And what in the hell happened here? Of course we've looked at this picture many times before, but have we really sat and discussed it? Really? In my opinion, no more pictures are necessary until this can be explained. Of course there were buildings on the other side here, and they've just demolished it, probably getting ready to put a parking lot in underground. And here is what excavation has revealed. And here people don't even realize they're driving on old buildings. How old is this? And clearly older than the new America. The new America has no idea what lies under its feet, always discovering new tunnels and passageways. It's a constant. Every city throughout the realm having an entire city underneath it. And it simply makes no sense. No good reason could be given. Again, these people in their apartments living on top of ancient buildings, bricked up windows, rotting metal, And this is the foundation. Many homes having crawl spaces, but oftentimes flooded with earth. And what explanation is given? None. Not here in America, not in Paris, not in Russia. Here we can see the Polytechnic Museum, brick with a weathered facade like it's been through hell, and much of the building underground. And I believe the Russians brought us the mudflood idea. And I believe it was this building that suddenly woke the people up in the alternative Russian history community. And once we saw it, we began to see it everywhere. I was looking for any construction information about this Polytechnic Museum, and there's very little. The origins of the museum go back to 1872, when they had an exhibition. Very similar story to the explanation for many of these wondrous buildings. An exhibition, a World's Fair, and even recently, in a past video, we examined a Russian communist fair that never really happened, but was completely built out. And this, in fact, was part of that. Here we can see the Polytechnic Museum, and Philip Druzinin made many videos on this subject, walking around the perimeter. And so, if they did build this in the 1870s, even though they don't even really tell us it was built, why did they bury the building several floors under, complete with windows? I mean, that's it. They build this, we're told, in the 1870s, and they build it like this? No. Nobody builds a building like this and then buries it. Little arches with bricked up entryways. And again, this is exactly what we see in Salt Lake City. Almost the same scene, the heavy equipment and many floors buried, as we can see here. Why? Now it's not even a case of could they have built this? It's a case of why they have built like this. Why would you build entryways and windows only to block them off? And in some cases, we're not even told there is a building. And these, I think, lend to some of the best cases that we have had a civilization wipe out and been told nothing about it. There's no history for this building. There's no name or address, but here it is. Here you can see the scratch marks from an excavator, just trying to remove the dirt, just trying to make a hole, and then hitting brick at least 15 to 20 feet underground. And this is our reality. You can throw away every history book out there. This is bigger than an elephant in a room, and this is the mudflood. The mudflood is one of those generic terms we use, as with so many in this community. Such a new topic, we don't even have terms. And when we do have terms, they may not be the best, but we have an understanding again. Ultimately, what we're dealing with is the burial of a rather sophisticated civilization. I would say just as sophisticated, if not more, than our present society. Again, looking for construction of this Polytechnic Museum, we come back to its founding in 1872. And this is not a lie. This is more like it. Rather than telling us it was built partially underground, we're told it was found in 1872. After the first all-Russian technical exhibition, in 1871, the Moscow Council set aside 500,000 rubles to create a museum. And here it is. Unbelievable. Again, to be told the building was constructed with windows below ground level is a slap in the face. And surely those in positions of power know this and are utilizing the bottom portion of this realm. Again, such an advanced infrastructure left behind, and most of it below our feet. And I'm sure this is all that the power structures are really working on, just excavating and benefiting, as they always have, from the old world, and keeping us in the dark and making us think that we are the peak of progress and at the height of human achievement. And nothing could be further from the truth. And this is much more than just a mud flood. This is bigger than just a flood, especially when it's realm-wide. It's one thing to see one floor buried, but several floors like this, 30, 50 feet down, this is a much bigger event. And I once had a dream, a very scary dream, where I found myself on the coast of California with my little Ford Ranger and my old wolf dog, Soul, and suddenly fountains began erupting from out of the ground, shooting up thousands of feet into the air, all around me. And in this dream, I knew it was it, and I didn't try to run, and it was such a certain, unescapable outcome that I didn't bother panicking or running. And I can feel it now as if I was there, just as real as anything I've experienced. The waters from below pushing up and flooding the realm. Just a theory, and just a dream, but I thought I would share. And now I just thought we would go through some pictures. This looking like any place, anywhere. And even the blocking job, blocking up the window, is done so well. How long has it been since these windows were installed? How long has it been since this whole building was exposed? Same with these columns and the Sphinx. Now we're often told that these are some of the oldest ruins, but when we realize everything is buried just equally all throughout our world, then it makes us reevaluate the dates and how old could everything really be. And to present day, this is still the case. People doing renovations only to discover that the building goes down. Here we're looking at least 4 stories. And look at the job just to remove the dirt in this time period. It is clear that people with these means were not the builders of such buildings. Struggling to renovate. Here again, unearthing a city. In many cases, they wouldn't unearth the cities. They would just leave them buried with half windows. In other examples, they would just build viaducts, or essentially roads, running over the old roads. And they try to tell us this is the beginning. Everything looking like an absolute mess. And clearly this is older than our beginning. When our people unknowingly set out to construct an underground parking lot and discover ruins like this, in my opinion, this is when history and everything we have been told falls apart. Here again, same types of examples. The very building I'm sitting in had the top of a brick wall, just like this, running through the center of the floor, and we ended up putting a floor on top of that. This is a great example because they're doing exactly what we're talking about in a very early time period, and yet there's just these Greco-Roman column ruins just buried down here, along with other things. And like I started off with, it's very exciting that the internet is actually flooded with our research. The layman not probably realizing how to even begin to find it. But as time moves on and more is revealed, I think we'll begin to get a better grasp and understanding of everything that we're seeing. I guess what I mean is we've laid a foundation, and now people can make some kind of sense out of what they're seeing. And real quick, I just want to look at this stolenhistory.net post. The Hollywood Babylon. Originally a book published in 1965, lending to this idea that the old world could be in the Americas already, long before the story of some man named Christopher Columbus. And I've come across this in my research a lot. Been blown away by certain sites that I find only to look into it a little more and be told this is the site of a Hollywood set that's been left abandoned. And I've been very puzzled and perplexed, oftentimes dropping the research when I should have continued. I think just as we have come to find that everything is repurposed from an old civilization, Hollywood is repurposing old ruins and claiming them as movie sets. And here we have a few examples I wanted to look at. One of the first epic Hollywood films, D.W. Griffith's Intolerance, was built around an enormous and realistic-looking Ishtar Gate. Another epic film by Cecil DeMille, The Ten Commandments, used the massive Egyptian ruins lying in the California dunes for its outdoor shots. After the filming wrapped, the crew apparently just dumped everything in the sand and went home. An organization called the Dune Center has been excavating the ruins for decades. Here's what the San Luis Obispo Tribune had to say. For more than 90 years, the set for DeMille's silent film, The Ten Commandments, have been buried in the shifting sands of the Guadalupe Dunes. Archaeologists have been slowly unearthing this set for years, and now the Dune Center is ready to present their latest findings. The non-profit organization will unveil a giant terracotta-colored Sphinx head and other treasures at the Sphinx and Drinks Auction and Artifact debut on July 21st. Does this make any sense? Archaeologists have spent years unearthing this old movie set, and just mind-blowing. And mind you, this is the first movie set, just a really early time period. It was a silent film, The Ten Commandments. And look at this. Really? Unbelievable. Just the scale for a silent movie that few have ever seen. And I don't know, 90 years. 90 years. Just built all this and dumped it in the sand. I mean, this isn't the kind of thing you just dump in the sand. None of this. This isn't the kind of thing that just gets lost. You just walk away from for 90 years and you lose it, and you need archaeologists to search for it? Let me know your thoughts. A similar Ishtar Gate stands at the intersection of Hollywood and Highland. And I've touched on this one before. There's lots of these Ishtar Gates. The original they tell us is in Iraq, but the one I made a video on was this Palace of Sargon here in Los Angeles, in the City of Commerce, at 100 Citadel Drive. Now it's a mall, and the narrative tells us it was a tire factory, a rubber and automotive tire factory. And I joked about it in that video with these Anunnaki characters. Even back then, really nothing has changed. And so why not? This is clearly not a tire factory. And if it looked like a tire factory, I wouldn't question whether it was an inherited building. But when you start building palaces and call them tire factories, or castles and call them prisons or penitentiaries, when they look like castles, it's very insulting and very suspicious. They want to have their cake and eat it. They want to inherit the building and keep it looking like a castle, but call it a rubber factory, a tire manufacturing plant. And I think Hollywood is just a good excuse to explain away a lot of these anomalies. Just as with the mudflood, I don't think you lose 30 feet of infrastructure and civilization. It doesn't just slip away and get buried slowly by dust, only for people to rediscover it hundreds of years later. No. Here's an article on the Smithsonian unearthing a prehistoric city in the Americas in the Arizona desert. And I would love to look into this city buried in the Guadalupe Nipomo Dunes in California. Sounds like there might be something very fascinating out there, and they already have a backstory ready to go, explaining it all away. Well, I think that's it for this week. It's been the worst one in a long time. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for being here today, and I'll see you next week.